Masechet Ketubot, Daf Kof Yod Bet, the last daf of the Masechet. And we continue with the praise of the land of Israel, especially its tremendous produce. So we are talking about Ha'azinu, where it says, V'dam Einav Tishteh Hamed, that the blood of grapes, from the blood of grapes you will drink foaming wine. So comparing blood, grapes don't produce blood, but rather it's referring to wine, which in the rest of Ha'azinu also is compared to blood. So what does this mean? In this world is not like the next world. In this world, if you want to make wine, you have to go and pick the grapes and press them and step on them. It's a long process. But in the future, you could just bring one giant grape. You'll have to need a wagon or a boat to carry it, and you can put it in the corner of your house, and from that one grape it will produce wine already. You don't even have to make the wine, and it'll be enough to fill a giant jug, a pitus, which is pictured here. That's the large size Greek jug. And furthermore, the wood that you'll get from the vines will be enough to cook a dish under it, make a fire to cook a dish. ואין לך כל ענבה וענבה שאין בה 30 גרבי יין שנאמר ודם עיניו תשתה חמד אל תקרא חמד אלא חומר. And every grape you can get from it more than 30 jugfuls of wine, each with a capacity of a se'ah. We learn that from the word hamed, which literally means foaming wine, but we read it as homed, which means 30 se'ah. כי אתה רבדי מי אמר מה דכתיב אוסרי לגפן עירו. In the blessings that Yaakov gives to his sons, it says binding his foal to the vine. What does that mean? אין לך כל גפן וגפן שבארץ ישראל שאין צריך עיר אחת לבשור, that the grapevines in Israel are going to be so big you only have one in Israel, that you will not require a foal to carry the load of its heart. From one grapevine, you're going to need an animal to carry what it produces. בני אתונו, אין לך כל אילן סרק בארץ ישראל שאינו מוציא מסוי שתי אתונות. And a donkey's colt, the choicest vine, that is serak, also means a barren tree, that even the trees that we think are barren now, in the future, in Eretz Yisrael, they will produce fruit so much that you'll need 2 donkeys, reading beni as beneh, meaning a plural. This is important because actually the Masechet is going to end on this note of barren trees becoming fruitful. ושמא תאמר אין בו יין, תמוד לומר כי בס ביין לבושו. And if you say, wait, these trees, they don't have wine, so that's why we're continuing to read back in Ha'azinu, כי בס ביין לבושו, that there's going to be so much wine that they're going to wash their garments in wine. Why would you do that? Doesn't it stain? Well, I guess if you wash the whole thing in wine, well, the point is that there's so much wine that you can use it even to wash your clothes if you want. V'shema tomar eno adom, and maybe you'll say, maybe it's wine, but it's not red wine. Tamad omar v'dam aynab tishtecha, made it's like blood, so that is red. And maybe you'll say that this wine is not inebriate, does not have a lot of alcohol. So we're reading suto as if it's like the word mesit, that causes one to be crazy. So it is alcoholic. And maybe you'll say it's not, it doesn't taste so good. So that's why the next phrase says his eyes will be red with wine, and the word hachlili is an interesting word. We're parsing as kol chech shetamo omer li. Every palate that tastes it will say, for me. Okay, so what we're doing is we're taking each phrase in this pasuk in Vaychi and explaining how each phrase adds more to the one before it, showing the great blessing of this fruit of the land of Israel. And this wine, maybe you'll say that the young people will like it, but not the old elder people will not be as good. And and that's why the rest of the pasuk says his teeth will be his teeth white with milk, and don't read that as leben shinaim, but rather leben shanim, that one who is has many years also will like it, to be a refined taste even for those who are older in years. Now after this fantastic midrash that we brought from this pasuk and each word and this wine and how great it is coming from these trees that's already fermented and tastes good. All right, you really went and exaggerated a lot. What's the simple, literal meaning of the pasuk? Can you tell us? כי אתה רב דימי אמרה כנסת ישראל לפני הקדוש ברוך הוא ריבונו של עולם רמוז בעיניך דבשים מחמרה ואחווה לי שיניך דבשים מחלבה. Rather, this is actually an allegory to HaKadosh Baruch Hu and Israel. Israel says, right, to Ribono Shel Olam, try to hint with your eyes that you love us, because that is sweeter than wine. And show us your teeth, so the ben shinayim, as referring to teeth, like when you smile, right, then you show the whiteness of your teeth, right? Show us a smile, because God's showing his love for us and favor. That is better than milk. Okay, so that's the peshat of the pasuk, which I think is really interesting, because this is a very metaphorical, allegorical explanation of the pasuk, that God could smile and God could wink with his eyes and show his love. Is that is the literal interpretation. Okay, so that's pretty funny. מסייע לרבי יוחנן, תאמר רבי יוחנן, תאמר בבין שיניים אל חברו, יותר ממשקהו חלב, שנאמר ולבן שיניים מהחלב, אל תקרא לבן שיניים, אלא ליבון שיניים. And this supports what Rabbi Yochanan says about, this is not about God, just about two people, that better that you show the whiteness of your teeth to your friend, meaning if you show your friend a smile, it's better than giving him a nice rich glass of milk to drink. Because this pasuk here in Vaychi says ulben shinayim mehalav, so to showing the whiteness of teeth, not ulben as son, but rather levin, meaning the whiteness of teeth is better than milk. Okay, Rav Chia bar Adam makre dar deke deresh lakish hava ipagat elata yome velata. Another story showing the greatness of the fruit of the land of Israel is about Rabbi Chia, who was the school teacher of the children of Resh Lakish. And one time Rabbi Chia did not come for 3 days. He didn't show up to teach the kids. So when he came, Resh Lakish says, where were you the past 3 days? הניח לי אבא, ועשיתי ממנה יום ראשון 300 אשכולות אשכול לגרב. He says, you have to understand, my father left me just one branch of one grapevine, and one day, the first day I harvested it, 300 clusters of grapes, and each cluster had enough to fill a jug of wine. Tremendous. So 300 times that. So I couldn't stop there, because even this one branch, look how much it had. And I went on. The second day, Yom Shini Basati 300 eshkolot, I got another 300 grape clusters on the second day. Sheteh eshkolot agarab. This time, I needed 2 clusters to fill a jug of wine. So the yield was only half as much as the first day. Still, it was a lot. So I couldn't stop there. Yom Shlishi Basati mena 300 eshkolot 3 eshkolot legarab. Third day, I got the same amount of clusters, even though on the third day they yielded even less. I needed 3 clusters to fill up one jug. And then even after that, there was so much more, I had to give away more than half of it, right? So I was busy getting all this these clusters and getting the wine from this inheritance. So that's why I didn't come to teach the kids. He said, you did the wrong thing. If you did not delay, you coming to teach the children, you would have produced even more wine. So you should not have done that, right? So it's not about the time that you spend, it's rather about going and teaching the children. That's the main thing that's getting you your blessing. And so you should have come and taught the children, and you could have spent less time with the grapes, and you would have yielded even more. Okay. Rami bar Yecheskel ikla lebne berak. Hazanhu lanhu izeh. Teka achlan tute te'ene. Veka natef dubsha mite'ene. Rami bar Yechezkel once came to Bnei Barak in Israel, and he saw some goats that were grazing under a tree. And this tree was a fig tree, and there was honey, not bee honey, but date honey that was oozing from the figs. They were so big and full that there were the sweet juice was coming out of the figs and going down onto the floor. And furthermore, these goats had milk dripping from them because they were so full. And then the two liquids were mixing with each other as they fell down. Amad Hainu Zavat Chalav Udvash. And Rabbi Cheskel said, look, literally a land flowing with milk and honey. It's literally flowing with the milk of these goats and with the honey from these dates, from these figs. There you go. So this, by the way, is important because probably the Dvash in the Pasuk is referring to fig honey or date honey, not bee honey, which is more rare. Amar Rabbi Yaakov ben Dostai, milod leono shelosha milin. Pam achat kidamti beneshef vehalachti ad kur karsulai de bidbash shel te'enim. So Rabbi Yaakov also wants to talk about the extent of the milk and honey in Israel. So he explains that there's 3 meal of a distance from Lud to Ono. And one time he woke up in the morning and he walked the whole way, an ankle deep in honey that was oozing from the fig trees. So it's literally flowing the whole time. So next rabbi says, even more, Resh Lakish, I saw this area that was flowing with milk and honey near Sipori. And this area was 16 by 16 meal, in other words, 256 square miles, all full of honey. Amar Rabba bar Hana lididi chazile zabat chalabash shel kol Eretz Yisrael. The next rabbi ups the ante even more, and he says, I saw the whole Israel that was full of honey. V'havya kimi be michse ad akra de tul banki estin v'taten parse urka ufutya shita parse. This area that I saw stretched from this bet michse until the fortress of Tulbanki. It was 22 parseh by 6 parseh, which is equal to about 132 square parsecs, or 2,112 square meal. Okay, huge amount, all of it full of milk and honey. Rabbi Hailbo and Rabbi Avira Rabbi Yosef bar Chanina iklu lahu atra. Oh, these 3 rabbis went to a certain place. Aitu kamaihu afar sekad hava keilfas kefar hino. They brought a peach that was as large as a stew pot. Ve'ilpas kefarhino, as a stew pot of kefarhino. They had really big stew pots. How big was their stew pots? Kamahave hamesh sein 5 se'ah. This is like 10 or 20 gallons. These large stew pots. So there was a peach that was that big. They brought it to the sages. They could only eat a third of it because it was so big. They gave away another third, and the other third, there was not even enough people to eat. They gave it to the animals to eat the last third. So the next year, Rabbi Elazar went there to check out the peaches. But that year, they brought him a peach, and he could hold it in his hand. It was much smaller. So he said, this is a fruitful land. Don't blame the land. But it turned into a salt waste. When you put salt on the land, it can't grow anything. Why? Because of the wickedness of the people who dwell there. In other words, because of our sins of the residents there, they caused the produce to shrink. Not because the land of Israel is blessed, but the people have to deserve it. Rabbi Yoshua ben Levi ikla legabla chazanu lanhu katufe tavu kaime ki igle. Another story about produce diminishing because people that don't deserve it. So Rabbi Yoshua ben Levi went to Gavla in the Golan, and he saw some clusters of vines, and they looked like they were as large as calves. He looked out and said, "Wow, they were so big." Amar Agalim ben Gefanim. He actually thought that they were calves. So So he said, hey, there's calves among the grapevines, right? You should better shoo them away so that they don't destroy the grapevines. And so the farmers, no, those are the clusters. Those aren't calves. They look so big. They look like calves, but that actually are the clusters. Amar eretz hachnisi perotayich limiat mosia perotayich lagoyim aladu shamdu alenu behatatenu. So Rabbi Yoshua ben Levi told the land, gather in your fruit. Don't produce so much. Why are you producing so much? For these Gentiles who stand over us in our sins, who are punishing us, for these foreigners, right? Better keep your blessing for another time when there's people that are more deserving. And so he told he told the land, the people that you're serving don't deserve it. Okay, and this says here goyim. If you look in the normal printed edition, it does not say that. Here you can see the Vilna printed edition says arviyim, Arabs. But in all other manuscripts it says goyim. So clearly goyim is the original, referring to whoever was living there, Romans, other nationalities that were living in the land of Israel. The Adaviyim had to turn into Adaviyim, so this must be because of censors, Christians that said Goyim. Oh, you're referring to Christians, right? So you got to take that out. So they changed it to Arabs. Although Arabs would not make sense because in the times of the Talmud, the Arabs were known just to be wandering nomads, but they were not in charge of the land. And so when you read the printed edition of the Vilna, it sounds like Arabs. Maybe people are going to say, look, this is saying something negative about Muslims, but there were no Muslims. Islam was not created yet, and Arabs were just the nomadic people and not in charge of anything. So so it's important to know that the Adaviyim is not the original, but rather, as it is in here, they restored it to the manuscript version. Okay, now that's not the end of the story. And a year later, Rabbi Chia came to that same place. He saw the clusters, and they were as large as goats, not as much big as calves. So you see, they did lessen because of Rabbi Yoshua ben Levi's statement. And so he says, Amarizim ben Agefanim. So he told the farmers, hey, I see goats among the grapevines. You better shoo those goats away. Now, actually, those were the clusters themselves, but they didn't want to tell him that because then he might say the same thing as Rabbi Yoshua ben Levi, that they don't deserve. So Amru lezil, la tabid lan ki chabrach. They said, go away, Rabbi Chia. Otherwise, you're going to curse the land like the previous year, right? It's true that there's maybe we don't deserve it, but we don't want these great clusters to be any less than they are. When Israel is blessed, when it's fully at its best, an area that measures one bet se'ah can produce 5,000 kor. This is like many thousands and thousands of times more than what would be the normal yield. Bishivata shel so'an bet se'ah osa shivin korin, and that's compared to Egypt, the most fertile part of Egypt, which is so'an, and over there, the same area, one bet se'ah produces only 70 kor. So this is 70 to chameshet ribo. 50,000 actually, right? 50,000 times what you put into it. Okay, Ditanya, Amar Rabbi Meir, Ani ra'iti bebikat bet she'an bet se'ah osa shib'in korin. Now we're going to derive this 50,000. How do we know? It? So Rabbi Meir says, I saw bet she'an, not So'an. So'an is in Egypt. Bet she'an is in the north of Israel, a very good land, right? So in a normal time, very, very good land, and Israel produces 70 kor. That 70 is the same as So'an, right? So the good land of So'an, the good land of Bet She'an, one area Bet Se'ah produces 70 kor. ואין לך מעולם בכל הארצות יותר מארץ מצרים, שמכיגן אדוני כארץ מצרים, ואין לך מעולם בכל ארץ מצרים יותר מסוען, תאבו מרבו במלכים. Now, the best land of the whole earth is in Egypt, and the best land within Egypt is So'an. How do you know that Egypt is the best land? Because the Torah compares it to Gan Eden. Gan Hashem is like Eretz Mitzrayim. So that's talking about Sodom, which is compared to as Misraim. So Misraim is the best land. And how do you know that Soan is the best within? Because the kings live there. The princes live there, so they're going to live in the best land possible. And if you want to find a rocky land where it's hard to grow things, there's no place rockier than Hebron. That's where there are the burial caves, like the Ma'at Machpelah. That's good if you want to have a cave, because it's very rocky. It's good for burying. It's not so good for planting. Nevertheless, Hebron, the worst land of Israel, is 7 times better than Soan, the best land of Egypt. How do you know? The simple reading of this is that Hebron was built up as a city 7 years before the area of Soan in Misraim. So it's telling you chronologically. But we read this differently. If you say built means actually the city was built earlier, that can't be. Would someone build a house for his younger child before he builds a house for his older child? Because look at the order of the genealogy. The children of Ham were first Cush, then Mitzrayim, he was second, and Fut Canaan, Hebron is in Canaan. So you see that Mitzrayim was older than Canaan, so too the land of Mitzrayim must have been built up before the land of Canaan, because you wouldn't build a home for a younger son before an older son. So therefore, this pasuk cannot mean chronologically that Hebron was earlier than Soan. Rather, built up means more developed, more fertile than Soan 7 times. Okay, and that's talking about Hebron, even Hebron, which is the rockiest land. But if it was a not rocky land, it would be even more. So it's going to be, we already have 70 is Soan, times 7 is 490, and that's the rocky part. So the good part is going to be at least 500 kor. And so that's when it's just plain. When Israel's just standard yield, it's 500 times. But when it's the best yield, it's 100 times that. So that ends up with a total of 500 times 100, which is 50,000. Okay, that's how we get the 50,000. That ends up being 1.5 million times more than the seed that you start with. That's how much yield it would be. Tanya, Amar Rabbi Yosef, Se'ah bihuda הייתה עושה 5 שאין, שא קמח, שא סולת, שא סובין, שא מורסין, ושא כיבור הים. Yosef says that if you have 1 se'ah of wheat that you reap in Yehuda, once you process it, you get 5 se'ah. So this defies the law of conservation of matter, that when you separate the grain, you're going to have 1 se'ah of regular flour, 1 se'ah of fine flour, 1 se'ah of bran, 1 se'ah of coarse bran, 1 se'ah of this inferior flour. Right, the quality of the flour depends on how much of the shell, the bran, is mixed up in it. So the very fine flour is only from the wheat kernel. So that's the hardest to get. But all of the various qualities are useful for something. So when you end up with, when you fully process it, you get 5 times the original amount that you put in. Amar le'ahu seduki l'Rabbi Chanina, ya'em meshabechitu ba be'ad akon. Bet se'ah achat hiniach li'aba mena meshach, mimena hamar, mimena ibur, mimena kitniyot, mena ra'ot miknati. So in the Sadoki, who usually are the antagonists of the rabbis, said that Rabbi Chanina says, you're doing very, very well, that you're praising the land and improving the land. I agree with you, right? So here's something that even the Sadducees and the rabbis can agree with, that the land is very blessed. And he explains, my father left me 1 bet se'ah of Eretz Yisrael. From that 1 bet se'ah, he could produce enough oil, wine, produce, legumes, and he can even have his sheep pasture, all from that one piece of land. Amar le'ahu bar emora'a lebar ar'ad Israel. Hai telata de kaima aguda de yardena, kama gadritu mina. An Amorite from outside the land of Israel was speaking to a resident in the land of Israel, and they're comparing whose land is better. So the Amorite asks, this palm tree that's on the banks of the Jordan in Israel, how many dates can you pick from it? And so the Israeli said, 60 kor. Amar le akati la lituba acharib tuha. Says, you have, the Amorite said, you have not entered fully the land of Israel, and you're already destroying it. Right? He says, you have a good land, but you're already not producing as much as I can produce. I am able to get 120 kor when I was farming it. So the person from Israel said, I was only talking about one side of the tree. On one half of the tree I got 60, but I also, from both sides of the tree, I can get 120. Okay, so the person that lived in Israel would not let himself be shown up by this Amorite. Pasuk in Emilia says, Hashem gives us a pleasant land, sebi, goodly heritage, or desirous. What does this mean? Sebi literally is a deer. So why is this Yisrael compared to a deer? Just like a deer, once you skin it, you can't get its flesh back in. Its skin stretches, and once you take it off, you can't get it back onto the same amount of flesh that it was once on when it's alive. So to Israel, the produce, the fruit that it produces, can't fit on the land, right? There's a limited sized land, and it produces so much that you don't have anywhere to store it. You can't believe where it came from. Or another interpretation, that just like a deer is very fast, faster than all the other animals, so to Israel ripens its fruits faster than all the countries. Now usually when something grows very fast, it also may mean that it's not as tasty. So you might say, just like a deer is very fast, but its meat is not fatty. We like non-fatty meat, but they like fatty meat, tastier. They needed their protein and their fat. But so Eretz Yisrael, although it grows quickly, but maybe the fruit is not as juicy. So that's why the pasuk, another pasuk in Shemot says that it is milk juicier than milk, sweeter than wine. And it grows fast, and it's also the best tasting. Rabbi Elazar ki hava salik le'etz Yisrael amar palti li mehada כי שמחוהו אמר פלטי לי מתרתה כי אותבוהו בסוד העיבור אמר פלטי לי מתלת. So Rabbi Elazar, he made aliyah. When he made aliyah, he said, I got one curse off of me. We'll see what these curses are. And when he got semicha, became a rabbi, he says, now I got another curse done off of me. And when he was appointed to be on the special council that set the calendar, only the top rabbis can be on that council, he says, I've been spared of the third curse. What was he talking about? Pasuk in Yechezkel. Shnemar, Vayeta yadi el hanevi'im hachozim shav. My hand is against the prophet that spoke falsely. And the continuation of the Pasuk says, Besod ami lo yihiyu. They will not be in the council of my people. So that's a curse that you can't be in the council of my people. So, zeh sod ha'ibur, but he was able to join the council, meaning the high council that decided the calendar. So I got rid of that curse that Yechezkel mentioned. That those false prophets, they will not be written in the register of the house of Israel. That is referring to semicha. When I got semicha, that I knew that curse didn't apply to me. They are cursed that they will not be able to enter the land of Israel. When I made aliyah, then I knew, look, I didn't get that curse. I merited to live in the land of Israel. Kemashma'o. Rabbi Zera ki hava salik l'Eretz Yisrael la ashkach mavra lemi abar nakat b'misra v'ka abar. Rabbi Zera went to Israel. He was crossing over the Jordan River, over, but he couldn't get a ferry, right? He missed the last ferry. And so he took hold of a rope, strung across, and he crossed by hanging on to this rope, maybe walking on a log, right? Kind of a dangerous, not an uncomfortable way to cross over. Amar lehu sadoki, ama peziza dekadmitu pumaychu leudonaichu, akati befzizutaichu kaimitu. A Sadoki said, you Jews, well, they're also Jewish, you rabbis, you're hasty people, you talk before you listen. How do you know that? Because you people, you said naaseh and then nishma. Though you committed to doing it before you knew what you were going to do. You've always been hasty, and so now look how you just act hastily. Why don't you sit and wait for the next ferry? Why are you crossing into the land of Israel in such a sloppy way? אמר לה, דוכתא דמשה ואהרון לא זכו לה, ענה מי עמה דזכינא לה. Rabbi Zera answered, says, even Moshe and Aaron, they didn't merit to get into the land of Israel. I don't want to wait one more second. I'm so eager to go. I'm even going to go in this dangerous, uncomfortable way into the land of Israel. So yes, sometimes being a little zealous and hasty is a good trait. Rabbi Abba menashe kefe de'ako, Rabbi Chanina metaken matkaleh, Rabbi Ameh v'Rabbi Aseh kaimeh mishimsha letula umitula leshimsha. Look how much the following rabbis loved the land of Israel when Rabbi Abba came to Akko, that's a port city. So when he landed, he would kiss the rocks of Akko. That's a good source for it today. Right, people land in Ben Gurion and they kiss the ground, they kiss the tarmac. Now it's harder to do because you don't land, you can't go on the ground also, you got to go into the tunnel. Okay, but wherever you get to the ground, you kiss the ground. Here's a source for it. And Rabbi Chia would repair stumbling blocks. Anytime he was going on the way, the highways, he would fix the potholes, remove the rocks. He's probably understanding literally the pasuk in Yeshaya that says, Yashevu ba'araba mesila, prepare a way, so that when everybody comes to Eretz Yisrael, they won't have stumbling blocks. He wanted it to be an easy path for everyone to come and make aliyah. Rabbi Ameh and Rabbi Aseh, when they were sitting in the land of Israel, if it was a sunny spot, they would move to a shade. When it was shady, they moved to sun. In other words, if they were too hot, they would go to the shade. If they were too cold, they would go to the sun. They made sure always to be in a comfortable spot wherever they were studying and teaching in Israel, so that no one would ever say, oh, this land is too hot, this land is too cold. They would make it comfortable so that everybody would praise the land of Israel, shouldn't say anything negative, not even about one spot of the land of Israel. Rabbi Chia bar Gamda mi Gandar be'afra, shenemar ki rasu abadecha et abanea ve'et afara yehonenu. Rabbi Chia, he would roll in the dust of Israel. As the pasuk in Tehillim says, your servants take pleasure in the stones and love her dust. Even the dust is beloved. When you love something so much, you just want to roll in it. Amar, so all those are positive, but now we're going to have one negative statement and end with a positive. Amar Rabbi Zera, Amar Rabbi Yirmiyah bar Abba, Dor sheben David ba kategoria betalmidei chachamim. The generation in which the Mashiach is going to come, Ben David, there are going to be categoria, prosecutors, denouncements against Torah scholars. Ki amrita kamed Shmuel amar seruf achar seruf, shnemar ve'od ba'asiriya ve'shaba ve'haya ve'yita leba'er. When it said to Shmuel, he agreed and said it's going to be refinement after refinement. Just like if you have metal and you want to refine it and get the pure silver out, right? So you have to put it in hot fire again and again, and you take out the dross, and you end up with less and less and less. Sometimes a tenth, and then a tenth of that, till you get it purified. It's a very difficult and torturous process, but that's the same thing here, that the Talmidei Chachamim are going to be refined, and that will come with suffering and lessening. Taneh Rab Yosef, bazozeh bazozeh de bazozeh. It's going to be spoilers and spoilers of spoilers. In other words, you're going to spoil the land, take everything away, and they're going to plunder it again and again until there's hardly anything left. But whatever's left will be very high quality, very pure. So this is quite a negative statement, but it's saying, I think, a warning. If you're living during hard times, don't give up. Don't think it's the end, right? Still have faith, have trust, have hope, have emunah, because maybe that just means that you are right before the good things to come, the time of Mashiach. Amar Rav Chia bar Ashi amar Rav, atidin kol ilanei serak shebes Yisrael sheyit'anu perot, shenemar ki es nasa peryo te'ena v'gefen natenu ochelam. And in fact, the Rav says, in the future, even the barren trees will bear fruit. As the pasuk in Yoel says, that a tree bears its fruit, and the fig tree and the vine tree will yield their strength. So this teaching that the regular trees, etz is just a regular tree, is even going to give fruit. We saw it above. So really this teaching could have been placed above where it fit better. But I think we want to end on a positive note and end on a messianic note. Many Masechtot do end on a note of a calling for the Mashiach. And I think we see from these two last sources why this is all here. What's the point of all this, this great blessing and exaggerated explanations and descriptions of what the land of Israel was, and even more about what it will be. I think the idea is that people should hold out hope and look forward to the ingathering of exiles and the returning to the land of Israel. And the second to last paragraph here says, listen, there might be suffering along the way, right? But don't be despondent, right? Don't give up hope just because you see that. Look forward to that goal. And so this whole series of Agadot is to keep that Jewish spirit alive. And we can be thankful today that we can already start to see the beginnings of this great blessing of the state of Israel. Hadran alach shene dayane gezerot uslika la masechet ketubot chazakim uberuchim.